sun was dipping low over the rolling hills of my 300-acre ranch in rural Colorado, casting a warm golden glow across the open fields. It was the kind of evening that made you want to sit on the porch with a cold beer, listen to the crickets, and let the world slip away. I'd worked 20 years in the grind of Denver's construction sites, saving every penny to buy the slice of heavenland where I could breathe free, away from the petty rules and nosy neighbors of city life. No HOAs, no clipboard warriors telling me how to live. Just me, my dogs, and the wide-open sky. Or so I thought. That peace shattered like a cheap windshield when I heard the thumping bass of music that had no business being on my property. I stepped out of my house, squinting toward the south field, and what I saw made my blood boil hotter than a Texas summer. There they were, 25 strangers, sprawled across my land like they owned it. Tents were popping up like weeds, kids were running wild, and adults were laughing, cracking open beers, and firing up barbecues. A goddamn inflatable bounce house was being inflated, its bright red and yellow colors screaming against the natural green of my pasture. Picnic tables were scattered around, coolers stuffed with drinks, and someone had even set up a small stage with speakers blaring some pop garbage I wouldn't let my dogs listen to. At the center of it all was a woman I'd come to know as Karen, curly-haired, middle-aged, loud as a foghorn, and wearing a visor that might as well have had "I'm in charge" embroidered on it. She was waving her arms, directing people like she was running a county fair, her voice cutting through the chaos with the kind of authority that comes from too much wine and not enough sense. I stood there for a moment, my boots rooted to the ground, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a few lost hikers wandering onto my property. This was a full-blown invasion, planned and executed with the kind of audacity that only comes from someone who thinks they're untouchable. My south field, the one I'd spent months fencing with steel-reinforced posts to keep my cattle and dogs secure, was being treated like a public park. I could see the gate from here, propped open with a rock, the chain cut clean through, the lock nowhere in sight. Someone had brought bolt cutters. Someone had planned this. My first instinct was to storm down there and start yelling, but I'd learned long ago that anger without a plan is just noise. Instead, I took a deep breath, let the heat in my chest simmer, and walked back inside to grab my phone. I had a security app tied to the cameras I'd installed after the last round of trouble with Karen and her HOA cronies. Those cameras, mounted on trees, fence posts, even disguised in birdhouses, were my eyes across the ranch, solar-powered and rolling 24/7. They'd caught everything. The cars pulling up, the RVs parking, the bounce house inflating, and Karen herself, strutting through the gate like she was the queen of my land. I tapped a button on the app, sending a signal to my pack, my dogs, my family. Now, let me be clear about these dogs. These weren't your average backyard mutts chasing their tails. I had 40 of them, German Shepherds, Malinois, Akitas, Pyrenean Mastiffs, each one trained to protect livestock, property, and people. They were strong, fast, and smarter than half the people I'd met in my life. Every one of them was registered with the county, their health certificates up to date, their training rigorous and legal. They weren't attack dogs, they were guardians. They didn't bite unless I gave the command, and I never did. But they knew how to make a point. They could circle, herd, and trap like nobody's business, and to a stranger, they looked like a pack of wolves straight out of a nightmare. That's exactly what I needed right now. The moment I gave the signal, the tree line erupted. Dust flew, and the ground shook with the thunder of 40 sets of paws charging across the field. The barking was deafening, a primal roar that could make your heart skip a beat. Down in the south field, the party stopped dead. It was like someone had hit pause on a movie. 1 second, people were laughing, flipping burgers, and dancing to their stolen music. The next, they were screaming, tripping over camping chairs, diving into tents, or scrambling onto their trucks like the ground was lava. One guy, a lanky dude with a backward baseball cap, tried to climb a tree, only to slip and land flat on his back. Kids froze, clutching their parents. A woman dropped her beer, the can rolling into the grass. And Karen? Oh, Karen was the star of the show. She was standing by the barbecue, holding a plastic wine glass, shouting orders like she could control the chaos. When she saw the dogs, her face went white as a sheet. "Whose dogs are these?" she screeched, her voice cracking. "Oh my God, call 911. The wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the ground, and she stumbled backward, her visor slipping crooked. She thought she could boss around my ranch, my dogs, my life. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know she'd just walked into a trap of her own making. See, my dogs weren't going to hurt anyone. They didn't need to. Their training was precise: circle, herd, intimidate. They moved like a single unit, a wall of fur and muscle closing in from every direction. They surrounded the trespassers, forcing them into a tight huddle in the middle of the field, like sheep cornered by wolves. The barking never stopped, a relentless chorus that drowned out the music and the screams. Chairs toppled. The barbecue grill tipped over, sending hot coals hissing into the grass. One guy shouted, "They're going to kill us." Another yelled, "I'm calling the cops." But the dogs didn't touch a soul. They didn't need to. The fear was enough. Karen, though, couldn't handle it. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opened in a silent scream, and then, boom, she hit the ground like a sack of potatoes. Fainted cold, right there in the grass, her visor rolling away like a discarded crown. The crowd gasped, some rushing to her side, others too paralyzed to move. I stood at the edge of the field, watching it all unfold, my phone still in my hand. I hadn't said a word yet. I didn't need to. The dogs were doing the talking for me. But then I noticed something that made my gut twist. Above the chaos, hovering like a vulture, was a drone. Its little red light blinked as it spun slowly, capturing every second of the scene below. This wasn't some kid's toy. This was a professional rig, with a mounted camera and a signal antenna. And there, slapped on the side, was a blue and white sticker with the HOA's logo. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a dumb mistake. This wasn't just Karen being her usual entitled self. This was planned. They were recording this, and I had a sinking feeling they weren't doing it for fun. I grabbed my walkie-talkie and called out, "Alpha Team, round up the dogs, defensive perimeter only. Do not engage." Within seconds, half the dogs peeled back, forming a wider circle around the field, just far enough to keep the trespassers boxed in but no longer chasing. The rest sat beside me, tongues out, eyes locked on the crowd, tails low but ready. They were listening, waiting for my next move. The trespassers, though, were still a mess. Some were crying, others were yelling, and a few were trying to pack up their gear, only to freeze when they saw the dogs shift positions. One guy, a middle-aged dad type with a polo shirt and a nervous smile, approached me slowly, hands raised like he was surrendering to the cops. "Look, man," he said, his voice shaky. "We didn't know. We thought this was community land." I stared at him, my jaw tight. "It's not," I said flatly. "This is my ranch. Every inch of it." He scratched the back of his neck, glancing back at the group. "Karen told us she had permission." I pointed toward her crumpled figure on the ground. "Well, she didn't. And now she's unconscious on my land after trespassing with 25 people and destroying my south fence." He swallowed hard, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. "We didn't mean to cause trouble. Maybe we can just pack up and go." "Maybe," I said, my voice cold. "But not before the sheriff gets here." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, keeping my eyes on the crowd. I didn't trust them to stay put, and I sure as hell didn't trust that drone still buzzing overhead. When I got through to the dispatcher, I laid it out clear as day: large-scale trespassing on private ranch land, property damage, and what looked like drone surveillance. I wasn't taking any chances. It took 12 minutes for the patrol trucks to roll up, their lights flashing against the fading daylight. Sheriff Ray was the first out, a grizzled guy who'd known me since I bought the place. He took one look at the scene, tents, coolers, a bounce house, and 25 panicked people huddled like they were on a field trip gone wrong, and raised his eyebrows. "Dan," he said, walking up. "What in the world happened here?" I pointed around. Karen decided to throw a spring campout on my ranch without permission. "That drone," I gestured upward, "is recording everything, and I think they planned this for a reason." Ray let out a low whistle. "You kidding me?" "Nope. Cut my fence, too." He cursed under his breath. "All right, let's get statements." As the deputies started collecting phones and taking names, EMTs arrived to check on Karen, who was starting to stir. She groaned, blinking her eyes open like she'd just woken up from a bad dream. When she saw me, she sat up fast, her face twisting. "What kind of psycho keeps 40 dogs?" she hissed. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Ray stepped in, his voice stern. "Ma'am, you're not on public land. You're on Mr. Dan Miller's private property. You and this group are here without permission, and you caused property damage. That's criminal trespassing." Karen scoffed, brushing grass off her pants. "I was doing the community a favor. This land's been empty forever." "That doesn't make it yours," Ray snapped. "And the drone?" Karen hesitated, her eyes darting to the side. "It was just for memories." Ray didn't buy it. "Right. We're confiscating the footage. You'll need to explain to the judge why you thought this was okay." But then came the twist that turned my suspicion into dread. One of the deputies called Ray over, whispering something while holding a small tablet. Ray frowned, nodded, and turned back to me. "Dan," he said carefully, "there's a problem." My heart sank. "What is it?" "They cut the footage." "What do you mean?" "I mean someone deleted the first few minutes of the recording. All that's left starts after the dogs were already surrounding them." My fists clenched. "That's not a coincidence." "No," he said. "It's not." Karen, of course, played innocent. "Must have been a drone malfunction," she shrugged. "Or maybe the battery died earlier. We have no idea how to work that thing." Ray looked like he was done with her games. "Well, that's for the lawyers to figure out now," he muttered. But the damage was done. 3 hours later, a video hit Facebook, edited and cropped to hell, titled "Unhinged Rancher Sets Wild Dogs on Community Campers." It was already at 10,000 views. Karen's voice narrated from off-camera, dripping with fake concern. "We were peacefully camping with children and elders, and this man unleashed a pack of dangerous, unlicensed animals on us. This is what living near an anti-HOA extremist looks like." My phone started buzzing, people from town, a local reporter, even my sister in Oregon. The video was everywhere. I'd warned Karen before. I'd put up signs, sent letters, followed the law to the letter. And now I was being painted as a lunatic with attacked dogs. But it wasn't just the lies that made my blood run cold. It was the last 10 seconds of the video, an aerial view of my property, zooming in slowly on my home, my porch, my address numbers, my mailbox. Karen wasn't just trying to make me look bad. She'd put a target on my back. The fallout was immediate. By sunset, the video had crossed 90,000 views. My phone wouldn't stop ringing unknown numbers, voicemails full of threats. One text read, "You're going to pay for what you did to those families." I didn't even know these people. The internet had decided I was the villain, all based on a clipped video and Karen's crocodile tears. I sat on my porch with Duke, my oldest German shepherd, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. My dogs lay around me, sensing the tension, their ears twitching. Inside, I'd turned off all the lights. I wasn't scared, but I was cautious. This was the internet age, a single lie could ruin you. The HOA didn't stop there. They released a statement backing Karen, claiming I'd endangered lives and suggesting my ranch be investigated for animal control violations. I laughed when I saw it. Animal control violations? Every dog was registered, their papers pristine, their training documented. This wasn't a pack of strays, it was a disciplined unit. But facts don't go viral. Stories do. That night, Ray texted me, "Stay low. I've got your back. but you might need legal help. The HOA had filed for an injunction to restrict my dog's movement on my own land. I didn't sleep. The fight was just beginning, and I knew Karen's campout was no accident. It was a setup, and I'd walked right into it. For months before Karen and her HOA circus turned my south field into their personal playground, I was standing on the porch of my new ranch, a cold coffee in hand, staring out at the 300 acres of Colorado paradise I'd just bought. The air was crisp, the kind that fills your lungs and makes you feel alive. The hills rolled out in every direction, dotted with pines and patches of wild grass, the kind of land that makes you understand why people used to fight wars over dirt. I'd spent 20 years busting my back in Denver's construction game, pouring concrete, hauling steel, dodging foremen who thought yelling was a personality trait, just to save enough for this. No HOA, no neighbors whining about my truck's oil stains or how tall my grass was. Just me, my dogs, and the quiet I'd been chasing my whole life. That was the dream. But dreams, it turns out, don't come cheap, and they sure as hell don't come without a fight. I'd picked the spot for a reason. It was far enough from town to feel like the middle of nowhere, but close enough to drive in for supplies. The real selling point, though, was the lack of an HOA. I'd lived in enough cookie-cutter subdivisions to know what those vultures were like, petty tyrants with clipboards, ready to fine you for painting your mailbox the wrong shade of beige. My last place in Denver had an HOA that sent me a $200 fine because my garbage can was visible from the street for an extra hour on pickup day. I was done with that nonsense. When I found this ranch, the realtor swore up and down it was free and clear of any homeowners association. The previous owners, a family who'd worked the land for decades, had never signed up for one. Sounded perfect. I signed the papers, handed over every dime I'd saved, and moved in, thinking I'd left the busybodies behind. Boy, was I wrong. The trouble started about a week after I settled in. I was out in the north pasture, checking the fence line where my cattle would eventually graze, when I noticed a woman standing at my gate. She was middle-aged, with curly hair that looked like it had been teased into submission, wearing sunglasses too big for her face and a visor that screamed, "I'm here to ruin your day." She was scribbling in a little notebook, her lips pursed like she'd just bitten into a lemon. I walked over, keeping my tone polite but firm. "Can I help you?" I asked. She didn't even look up at first, just kept writing. "I'm Karen," she said finally, like that was supposed to mean something. "I represent the neighborhood HOA. Your fence isn't painted to regulation, and those wind chimes," she pointed at the ones hanging on my porch, "are too loud. They're disturbing the community." I blinked, trying to process the sheer gall of it. "Ma'am," I said, slow and deliberate, "this is my ranch. I don't live in your neighborhood, and I'm not part of your HOA." She finally looked up, her sunglasses sliding down her nose just enough to show her squinting at me like I was a bug she wanted to squash. "That's not how this works," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "The previous owners attended our meetings. They understood the importance of community standards. You're new, so I'll give you a week to fix the fence and remove the chimes." I stared at her, my jaw tight. "Lady, I don't know who you think you're talking to, but this is private property. You've got no jurisdiction here. Now, I'd appreciate it if you'd get off my land." Her cheeks flushed, and for a second, I thought she might argue. But she just snapped her notebook shut, turned on her heel, and marched back to her shiny SUV parked on the county road. I watched her drive off, thinking that was the end of it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Karen wasn't the type to take no for an answer. She was the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, not elected, not official, just loud and full of herself. From what I'd later learn, she'd been running the HOA like her personal fiefdom for years, bullying people into compliance with her endless rules and fake authority. The previous owners, a nice older couple, had gone to her meetings not because they had to, but to keep the peace. They'd nod, smile, and ignore her, and she'd leave them alone. Me? I wasn't interested in playing nice with a wannabe dictator. Over the next few weeks, Karen became a regular pain in my ass. She'd show up at my gate every couple of days, always with that notebook, always with a new complaint. My truck was an eyesore because it was parked in my own driveway. My dogs were intimidating because they barked when she got too close to the fence. One time, she had the nerve to complain that the gravel I'd laid on my access road was too dusty and might affect her allergies. Each time, I'd repeat the same thing. I'm not in your HOA. Leave me alone. Each time, she'd huff, scribble something in her notebook, and storm off. I started to wonder if she was just bored, or if she got some kind of thrill out of harassing people. Turns out, it was both, and a whole lot worse. Things took a turn about a month in, when I started noticing signs that Karen's vendetta was escalating. One morning, I found a flyer taped to my gate, printed on bright yellow paper, announcing an HOA community hike scheduled for the following weekend. The map on the flyer showed a route that cut straight through my north pasture. I ripped it down, my blood pressure spiking. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a declaration of war. I called the sheriff's office, figuring I'd nip this in the bud. Sheriff Ray, a no-nonsense guy who'd been patrolling the county for longer than I'd been alive, listened as I explained the situation. Sounds like Karen, he said with a sigh. She's been a thorn in a lot of folks' sides. But unless she's caught trespassing, there's not much I can do. Put up some signs, maybe some cameras. That usually scares off her type. I took his advice. That same day, I drove to the hardware store and bought a stack of private property, no trespassing signs, the kind with big red letters you can't miss. I bolted them to every fence post along the perimeter, making sure they were visible from the road. I also ordered a set of weatherproof security cameras, the kind that run on solar power and store footage on memory banks, no Wi-Fi needed. I wasn't taking any chances. By the end of the week, my ranch was locked down tighter than Fort Knox, with cameras hidden in trees, on posts, even inside fake birdhouses. I figured that would be enough to keep Karen and her minions at bay. I was wrong. The weekend of the community hike rolled around, and sure enough, I spotted a group of teenagers with backpacks trudging through my north pasture. They weren't being sneaky, they were loud, laughing, tossing empty soda cans into the grass like they owned the place. I drove out in my truck, keeping my cool, and pulled up alongside them. "Hey," I called out, leaning out the window. "You're on private property. You need to leave." The kids looked confused, not hostile. One of them, a lanky boy with a mop of brown hair, stepped forward. Sorry, man." Karen said it was okay for us to camp here overnight. She said the owner was cool with it. I gritted my teeth. Karen doesn't own this land. I do. And I didn't give anyone permission. You need to go now. The kids apologized, grabbed their stuff, and hightailed it back to the road. They seemed genuinely embarrassed, like they'd been duped. I couldn't blame them. Karen was the problem, not a bunch of dumb teenagers. But it didn't stop there. The next weekend, I woke up to the sound of car doors slamming. I looked out the window and saw a group of moms and kids, maybe a dozen people, parking along the county road and dragging coolers, fold-up chairs, and picnic blankets through my gate. Not just any gate, either. The lock was gone, the chain was cut, and the gate was propped open with a rock. I was livid. This wasn't a mistake anymore. This was vandalism. I grabbed my phone, snapped photos of the damage, and called Ray again. He showed up 20 minutes later, shaking his head as he surveyed the scene. "Dan, I'll be honest," he said, kicking the cut chain with his boot. "Unless we catch someone in the act, it's hard to pin this on anyone. Could be Karen, could be some random jerk. You got any cameras up yet?" I nodded. "They're going in this week." He sighed. "Good. Get more signs, too. And maybe talk to a lawyer. This is starting to look like harassment." I followed Ray's advice to the letter. The cameras went up, their lenses catching every inch of the property. I added more signs, these ones with extra warnings. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I even had my lawyer, a sharp woman named Cheryl who specialized in property disputes, draft a letter to the HOA. It was polite but firm, stating that I wasn't part of their community, that my land was private, and that any unauthorized entry would be treated as trespassing. Cheryl dropped it off at the HOA's clubhouse herself, making sure it was hand-delivered to the board. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought wrong. Karen didn't just ignore the letter. She took it as a personal challenge. I started hearing rumors in town, whispers at the feed store, comments at the diner, that the HOA was pissed about the new guy who thought he was above everyone else. People I'd never met were giving me dirty looks, like I'd personally insulted their grandmothers. I didn't care much about small-town gossip, but it was clear Karen was spinning a narrative. She was painting me as the bad guy, the outsider who didn't care about community values. Never mind that I'd spent my first month on the ranch helping a neighbor fix his tractor and donating hay to the local 4-H club. Facts didn't matter to Karen. Control did. I started digging into the HOA's history, trying to understand what I was up against. Turns out, the HOA wasn't even supposed to have any power over my land. The development they governed was a mile away, a cluster of McMansions with manicured lawns and identical mailboxes. My ranch predated their neighborhood by decades, and the previous owners had never signed any HOA agreement. But Karen and her board acted like their rules applied to the whole damn county. They'd been bullying other landowners for years, fining people for violations that weren't even legal, organizing community events on private property, even pressuring folks to sell if they didn't play ball. The more I learned, the angrier I got. This wasn't just about a fence or some wind chimes. This was about power, and Karen was drunk on it. By the time the cameras were fully installed, I was on high alert. I'd catch Karen driving by my gate some mornings, slowing down just enough to glare at the signs. Once, I saw her taking photos of my property from the road, her phone held up like a sniper's scope. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. The cameras were watching, and I was building a case. But the incidents kept coming. A week after the moms and kids fiasco, I found tire tracks in my east field, like someone had driven an ATV through it. Then I started getting anonymous notes in my mailbox, typed, not handwritten, saying things like, join the HOA or leave, and your dogs are a danger to the community. I turned them over to Ray, who added them to the file he was building. She's escalating, he warned me. Watch your back. I wasn't scared, but I was pissed. This was my home, my dream, and some entitled busybody with a superiority complex was trying to ruin it. I doubled down on security, adding motion sensors to the cameras and setting up floodlights along the fence line. I also started training my dogs for longer patrols, letting them roam the property at night to discourage any would-be trespassers. Those dogs, 40 of them, each one a masterpiece of strength and loyalty, were my secret weapon. They weren't just pets, they were my partners. I'd spent years training them to protect the ranch, to herd cattle, to sense trouble before it even arrived. They were registered, vaccinated, and disciplined, but to someone like Karen, they were just dangerous animals. That's what she called them in the HOA newsletter I found crumpled in my mailbox one day. A rag full of lies about how my uncontrolled pack was a threat to kids and pets. I laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. She was laying the groundwork for something bigger. Looking back, I should have seen the campout coming. Karen wasn't the type to give up, and she wasn't working alone. The HOA board, a group of spineless yes men and women who worshipped her every word, backed her every move. They'd been holding emergency meetings about me, according to a guy at the feed store who'd overheard them at the diner. They were obsessed with bringing me to heel, with forcing me to bend to their rules or leave. The previous owners had played along, but I wasn't them. I wasn't going to smile and nod while Karen turned my ranch into her personal playground. I'd bought this land to escape people like her, and I'd be damned if I let her win. That's what made the campout so infuriating. It wasn't just a party. It was a middle finger to everything I'd worked for. Karen didn't just want to annoy me, she wanted to break me. She wanted to show me who really ran this corner of Colorado. And when she brought 25 people, 11 cars, 4 RVs, and a bounce house onto my land, she thought she'd won. She thought I'd back down, apologize, maybe even sell the ranch to get away from her. She didn't know about the cameras. She didn't know about the dogs. And she sure as hell didn't know about the fight she'd just started. By the time she was lying in the grass, passed out from her own panic, I was already planning my next move. Karen had crossed a line, and I was going to make sure she regretted it. The sun had barely set when the Facebook video hit like a Molotov cocktail tossed into my life. Titled "Unhinged Rancher Sets Wild Dogs on Community Campers," it was a masterclass in deception, cropped, edited, and narrated by Karen herself, her voice dripping with fake tears and righteous indignation. "We were peacefully camping with children and elders," she said off camera, "and this man unleashed a pack of dangerous, unlicensed animals on us. This is what living near an anti-HOA extremist looks like." The footage started mid-chaos, with my dogs circling the trespassers, their barking amplified to sound like a horror movie soundtrack. No context, no shots of the cut fence, no mention of the 25 people who'd invaded my private land with tents, RVs, and a bounce house. Just 90 seconds of lies, designed to paint me as a lunatic. By the time I saw it, the video had already racked up 10,000 views, and my phone was buzzing like a hornet's nest. I sat on my porch, Duke at my feet, his ears twitching as he sensed my tension. The other dogs were sprawled across the yard, their eyes glinting in the moonlight, alert but calm. Inside, I'd turned off the lights, not out of fear but caution. The internet was a beast, and I knew what happened when a viral video turned you into the villain. The comments were pouring in, strangers calling me a psychopath, a dog abuser, a danger to society. "This guy needs to be locked up," one wrote. "Those poor kids," said another. Someone even tagged the local animal control office, demanding they seize my feral pack. My sister in Oregon called, her voice tight with worry. "Dan, what the hell's going on? I just saw a video of your dogs attacking people." I had to walk her through it, step by step, to calm her down. But the calls kept coming, reporters, neighbors, even a guy from the feed store who wanted to know if I was okay. I wasn't okay. I was pissed. The worst part wasn't the lies. It was the final 10 seconds of the video. The drone footage zoomed in slow and deliberate, past the chaos of the campout, past the south field, right to my house. My porch, my front door, my mailbox with the address numbers clear as day. Karen hadn't just smeared me, she'd doxed me. She'd put a target on my back, and the internet was ready to pull the trigger. By midnight, the video had crossed 90,000 views, and my phone was flooded with voicemails from unknown numbers. "You're a monster," one woman screamed. "You're gonna pay for what you did to those families," a man growled. Another message, this one a text, was just 4 words: "We know where you live." I stared at it, my jaw tight, my hand resting on Duke's head. This wasn't just a PR problem. This was a threat. The HOA didn't waste any time piling on. The next morning, they released an official statement on their website and social media, a sanctimonious word salad that backed Karen's story to the hilt. "We are deeply concerned about the dangerous actions of Mr. Dan Miller, who endangered the lives of community members, including children and seniors, by releasing aggressive animals during a peaceful gathering," it read. They called for an investigation into my unlawful aggression and suggested my dogs were a public safety hazard, citing numerous complaints about their behavior. It was all bullshit. Every one of my 40 dogs was registered, their health certificates pristine, their training documented down to the last command. I'd spent years building a disciplined unit, not a pack of strays. But the HOA knew facts didn't matter. They were betting on outrage, and they were winning. The fallout was relentless. By noon, my inbox was clogged with emails from local news outlets, all wanting my side of the story. A reporter from the county paper showed up at my gate, her camera guy filming the no trespassing signs like they were evidence of my guilt. I didn't talk to her. I wasn't ready to play their game, but the pressure kept building. Animal control called, saying they'd received a formal complaint about my dogs being used for aggressive purposes. I told them to get a warrant or get lost. They didn't have one, but the call left a bad taste in my mouth. Then came the HOA's next move, a motion for an injunction to restrict my dog's movement on my own land. They filed it with the county court, claiming my pack posed an imminent threat to the community. It was a power grab, plain and simple, designed to neuter my ability to protect my property. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, a pot of coffee going cold, scrolling through the comments on the video. Some were just ignorant, people who'd bought Karen's sob story hook, line, and sinker. But others were vicious, the kind of hate that comes from people who've never met you but already want you dead. "Hope someone burns his ranch down," one guy wrote. "Those dogs need to be put down," said another. A few even mentioned my address, reposting the drone footage with captions like, "This is where the psycho lives." I dealt with tough guys on construction sites, bar fights, even a few run-ins with shady subcontractors, but this was different. This was a mob, and Karen was holding the pitchfork. The next morning, I met with Cheryl, my lawyer, at her office in town. She was a no-nonsense woman, the kind who could stare down a judge and make him blink first. She'd handled farm disputes, HOA battles, even a case where a rancher's horses were wrongfully seized. I laid it all out, the campout, the dogs, the drone, the video, the threats. I showed her the HOA's statement and the injunction filing. She flipped through the papers, her expression grim. "This is bad, Dan," she said, tapping the screenshot of the video. "They've got the narrative, and they're running with it. But it's fixable." "How?" I asked, leaning forward. She looked me dead in the eye. "We file first. Harassment, trespassing, defamation. We get ahead of this. But more importantly, we need to control the story. You've got cameras, right?" I nodded. "Good. That's our ace. But there's something else." She paused, her finger resting on the drone image. "This wasn't just a camping trip. This was organized. They baited you." Her words hit like a punch. I'd suspected it, but hearing it from Cheryl made it real. The campout wasn't a spontaneous party. It was a trap, designed to provoke me, to make me look like the bad guy. The drone, the edited footage, the HOA's quick statement, it was all part of a plan. But why? Cheryl had a theory. "They want your land," she said. "This HOA's been pulling stunts like this for years. They target properties outside their jurisdiction, make life hell for the owners, and pressure them to sell. Your ranch is prime real estate, 300 acres, no restrictions, perfect for development. They're not just trying to bully you into joining the HOA. They're trying to run you out." I sat back, my mind racing. It made sense. The HOA's neighborhood was a mile away, a gated community of overpriced houses with no room to grow. My ranch, with its open fields and no zoning limits, was a developer's wet dream. Turn it into a subdivision, slap up some luxury homes, and the HOA could jack up their dues while pocketing kickbacks. Karen wasn't just a control freak. She was a cog in a bigger machine. And that drone? It wasn't just recording for fun. It was evidence manipulated to bury me. The threats kept coming. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. A man's voice, low and menacing. "You better watch your back, Miller. People don't take kindly to dog attacks around here." I hung up, but my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. These people didn't know me. They didn't know my dogs. They'd swallowed Karen's lies whole and decided I was the enemy. I checked the cameras, half expecting to see someone creeping around my fence. Nothing yet, but I wasn't taking chances. I set the dogs on a tighter patrol schedule, their routes covering every inch of the perimeter. If Karen or her goons tried anything, they'd regret it. The media circus didn't let up. By the next day, the local news was running the story nonstop, complete with a headline that made my blood boil. "Rancher refuses animal control inspection after dog attack allegations." Attack? No one was bitten. No one was even scratched. But the word attack was everywhere, repeated like gospel. The reporter, a young woman with a fake concerned tone, stood outside my gate, gesturing at the signs and the fence like they were proof of my guilt. "Residents are calling for action," she said, as fears grow about the safety of this rural community. I wanted to scream. Fears? The only thing anyone should have been afraid of was Karen's ego. Then came the lawsuit. Karen and 15 of the campers filed a class action suit against me, claiming emotional distress, property endangerment, and community trauma. The paperwork, delivered by a smug process server who looked like he'd stepped out of a bad lawyer ad, was a laundry list of nonsense. They wanted $500,000 in damages, plus a court order to neutralize my dog's legal speak for putting them down. I read the document in my kitchen, the words blurring as my anger grew. These people had cut my fence, trashed my field, and lied to the world, and now they were suing me? It was absurd, but it was also terrifying. A lawsuit like that, even if it was garbage, could drain my savings and tie me up in court for years. Cheryl wasn't fazed. "This is a scare tactic," she said when I showed her the papers. "They're hoping you'll settle to avoid the hassle. But they've overplayed their hand." She was already drafting a countersuit, one that would hit harder than theirs. Defamation, trespassing, property damage, intentional infliction of emotional distress. She was throwing the book at them. But we needed more than legal filings. We needed proof. That's when the whistleblower came in. Late that night, Cheryl got an anonymous email with a zip file attached. The subject line was simple: HOA Truth. Inside were internal emails, chat logs, and planning documents from the HOA board. It was a goldmine. The messages showed Karen and a few others led by the HOA president, a slick developer named Duval, had orchestrated the campout from start to finish. They'd chosen my south field because it was visible from the road, perfect for maximum drama. They'd brought the drone to capture evidence of my aggression, with specific instructions to edit out anything that showed their trespassing. They'd even rehearsed the campers' reactions, coaching them to scream and act terrified when the dogs appeared. One email from Karen was particularly damning. "Make sure the kids are front and center. It'll look worse if he scares them." I felt sick reading it. These weren't just lies. They were calculated, cold-blooded manipulation. The whistleblower's files also revealed the bigger picture. The HOA wasn't just after control, they were after my land. Duval had been in talks with a Nevada-based development company, pitching my ranch as the site for a new gated community. The plan was to force me out, rezone the land, and turn my fields into cookie-cutter houses and a shopping plaza. The campout was the first step: provoke me, frame me, and use the public backlash to justify seizing my property. The drone footage, the lawsuit, the media frenzy, it was all part of a long con to strip me of everything I'd worked for. I couldn't sleep after that. I paced the house, the dogs following me from room to room, their eyes locked on me like they knew something was wrong. I kept thinking about the families who'd been dragged into this, regular people who thought they were just going camping, not pawns in Karen's scheme. But I was done feeling sorry for them. They'd chosen to believe her, to trespass, to sue me. Now it was my turn to fight back. I called Cheryl at 6 a.m. "We're going public," I said. All of it, the emails, the footage, everything. She didn't hesitate. "Good. Let's burn their house down." The next day, we started planning. Cheryl reached out to a local reporter, Sam Torres, a guy known for digging into real stories, not just chasing clicks. We invited him to the ranch for a private press conference, just him and his crew. I wasn't ready to face the whole media circus yet, but Sam was different. He'd written about HOA scandals before, and he hated bullies as much as I did. Meanwhile, I pulled every second of footage from my cameras, hours of unedited video showing the trespassers arriving, Karen cutting the gate, the campers setting up, and my calm warning before I called the dogs. It was the truth, raw and undeniable, and I was going to make sure the world saw it. But the HOA wasn't done. That afternoon, 2 animal control trucks rolled up to my gate, followed by a news van. The officer in charge, a gray-haired woman named Liz, waved a clipboard like it was a badge of honor. "Mr. Miller, we've received a formal complaint," she said. "Your dogs are being used for aggression and are a public safety threat." I crossed my arms. "You got a warrant?" She blinked. "Well, no, but if you could let us take a look." "No warrant, no entry." I cut her off. "All my dogs are registered and cleared. You're welcome to check the county records." I looked past her, straight at the cameraman filming from the road. "Funny how you care more about a fake complaint than 25 trespassers destroying my property." Liz shifted uncomfortably, but she didn't push it. They left, but the news van didn't. That evening, the headline was predictable: "Rancher refuses animal control inspection amid dog attack claims." The lies were piling up, and I was running out of time. Karen showed up the next morning, bold as brass, wearing a pastel blue cardigan and those oversized sunglasses. She didn't come to the house this time. She stood at the gate, holding a manila envelope like it was a bomb. The dogs watched her from the field, their tails stiff, their eyes locked on her every move. I walked out, keeping my distance. "I'm giving you a final chance to make this right," she called, her voice loud enough for the cameras I knew were rolling somewhere. "Apologize, settle quietly, or this gets worse." I tilted my head. "You trespassed. You cut my fence. You try to frame me with edited footage. And now you're threatening me." Her lips curled into a smirk. "You don't know who you're dealing with." I stepped closer, my voice low. "I do. A bored woman with too much time and too little respect." Her face flushed, and she tossed the envelope through the fence bars before storming off. Inside was the lawsuit notice, expanded to include more names and bigger demands. They wanted my dogs destroyed, my ranch inspected, and me to pay for their trauma. It was a desperate move, but it showed how far they were willing to go. I handed the papers to Cheryl, who just smiled. "They're scared," she said. "They know we've got the footage. This is their last gasp." She was right, but I wasn't celebrating yet. The video was still out there, the threats were still coming, and my address was still plastered across the internet. Karen and the HOA had turned my life into a battlefield, and I was ready to fight, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they had one more card to play. The morning after Karen's last stand at my gate, I stood in front of my barn, the air cool and sharp, the kind that wakes you up whether you want it to or not. Duke sat at my feet, his ears perked, his eyes scanning the horizon like he knew the war wasn't over. Cheryl, my lawyer, was next to me, her laptop open on a folding table, ready to show the world the truth. We'd invited Sam Torres, the one reporter I trusted, to the ranch for a private press conference. No circus, no shouting matches, just the facts, laid bare for anyone willing to listen. Sam's drone crew, with my permission, hovered above, capturing the wide sweep of my land, the fences I'd built, the fields I'd fought for. I looked into his camera, my voice steady but burning with the fire of a man who'd been pushed too far. "What happened last week wasn't just trespassing," I said. "It was manipulation. It was a calculated attempt to frame an innocent man for protecting what he legally owns. But most importantly, it was a lie to control this community through fear." Cheryl took over, her voice like a blade, cutting through the bullshit. She played clips from my cameras on a big outdoor screen we'd set up by the barn. The footage rolled, unedited and raw, Karen unlocking my gate with bolt cutters, waving in 11 cars and 4 RVs like she was directing a parade. The campers setting up tents, a bounce house, and a stage, laughing as they trashed my field. My calm walk down to the south pasture, my voice clear as I warned them to leave, and finally, the dogs, my 40 trained guardians, circling but never touching, herding the trespassers into a tight knot of panic. It was undeniable, a truth so stark it made the air feel heavier. Sam's jaw tightened as he watched, his pen scribbling notes. When the clips ended, he looked at me. "This changes everything," he said. I nodded. "It better. That evening, Sam's story aired under the headline "The Ranch Truth." Unedited footage reveals shocking HOA setup. It didn't just go viral, it exploded. Not in hours, but in minutes. The video spread across social media, local news, even picking up traction on national outlets. People were outraged, but not at me this time. Comments flooded the HOA's Facebook page, calling them out as liars, bullies, and worse. "Karen needs to be in jail," one wrote. "This guy's a hero for standing up to these crooks," said another. Local businesses yanked their sponsorships from HOA events, and the community's trust in their board crumbled like dry dirt. Several campers from the lawsuit publicly apologized, withdrawing their claims in shame. One mom posted a tearful video, admitting she'd been misled by Karen's promises of a community outing. "I didn't feel sorry for her. She'd made her choice." Then came the bombshell. Late that night, Cheryl got an anonymous email with a subject line that made my heart skip: HOA corruption proof. The attachments were a digital dynamite keg, internal emails, secret chat logs, and planning threads from the HOA board. They showed Karen and the HOA president, Duval, orchestrating the campout like a military operation. They'd chosen the drone angles to maximize drama, edited the footage to cut out their crimes, and even scripted the campers' terrified reactions. One chat from Karen read, "If he calls the dogs, we've got him. Make sure the kids scream loud." Another email from Duval to a Nevada developer laid out the real goal: "Once Miller's gone, we can rezone the ranch for the new subdivision." Big profits. It was a conspiracy, plain and simple, and they'd bet everything on me folding. They'd bet wrong. We printed every document and rushed them to the courthouse. Cheryl filed a countersuit for $2.5 million, slamming the HOA with charges of defamation, attempted land fraud, trespassing, and intentional emotional harm. She named Karen, Duval, and 2 other board members as primary defendants, their own words now weapons against them. But before the legal gears could even start turning, Sheriff Ray called me with news that hit like a thunderclap. "Dan," he said, his voice tired but with a hint of a smile, "Karen's been arrested. She used unauthorized credentials to access a city contractor's drone. That's fraud, and it's federal. Plus, we found the bolt cutters in her trunk. Got her on property destruction, too." I hung up, speechless, a grin spreading across my face. The queen of the HOA was finally going down. The news broke that night, with footage of Karen in cuffs, her mascara smeared, her mouth running like a broken faucet as deputies led her away. The town buzzed, the story dominating every conversation at the diner, the feed store, the gas station. People who'd once nodded along to Karen's rants now shook their heads in disgust. But the fight wasn't over. A week later, as I was repairing the cut section of my fence, a black pickup pulled up. A man stepped out, boots crunching on the gravel, his face weathered but sharp. "You Dan?" he asked. I nodded, wary. "Name's Marcus. Private investigator. Been following your case." He handed me a thick folder. "You're not the first they've tried to run out." Inside were photos, spreadsheets, and video clips of other families who'd mysteriously sold their properties after HOA conflicts. Marcus explained the pattern. The HOA would target a landowner, stage violations, and weaponize public opinion to force a sale. My ranch was their biggest prize yet, 300 acres of prime land, perfect for a developer's paycheck. "They picked the wrong guy this time," Marcus said, his eyes glinting. But then his phone buzzed and his face darkened. "Brace yourself," he said. "Karen made bail. She's calling a town hall meeting tomorrow night. Says she's got a big reveal." My stomach twisted. Karen wasn't done. She was cornered, desperate, and ready to burn everything down. I spent that night with Marcus's folder, every page fueling my resolve. The HOA had ruined lives, and I wasn't going to let them win. I gathered my footage, printed key emails, and organized it all into a binder labeled "Full Truth, HOA War." The next evening, the town hall was a powder keg. The community center was packed, neighbors, reporters, even folks from neighboring counties drawn by the viral drama. When Karen walked in, dressed in white like some martyr, the room went silent. Her smile was forced, her eyes tired, but she was still playing the part. She tapped the mic and dropped her bomb. "I have documents," she said, holding up a USB stick, showing Mr. Miller's land purchase was rushed and possibly forged. The room erupted. I stood, my voice cutting through the noise. "You're accusing me of land fraud now?" Karen smirked. "I'm investigating. The people deserve transparency." The crowd was shouting, some calling her out, others confused. I stepped onto the stage, my binder in hand. "May I speak?" I asked the moderator. He nodded. I opened the binder and laid it all out, laminated stills of Karen cutting my gate, clips of her directing the campout, emails proving her scheme. I read her words aloud, let the footage play, and walked the room through every lie. By the time I finished, the hall was silent, then exploded with applause. People stood, cheered, drowned out Karen's feeble attempts to speak. The moderator shut her down. "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. That's enough." Outside, the night air was cool, and a few townsfolk shook my hand. A young couple said, "We're new here." Glad someone's standing up to her. But Marcus appeared from the shadows, his phone in hand. "There's more," he said. A leaked text chain revealed Duval had been working with a developer to rezone my land for a gated community. The campout, the drone, the lawsuit, it was all to force me out. They'd planned to call my dogs a public hazard and seize them. That was the final straw. I turned to Marcus. "We go to war." War meant legal fire and public exposure. The next morning, Cheryl, Marcus, and I sat at my dining table, coffee steaming, dogs snoozing at our feet. Cheryl filed a restraining order against the HOA board, barring them from my land or dogs. Marcus handed over proof of Duval's secret payments to a Nevada developer, complete with plans for new roads and a shopping plaza. We went public, sending the evidence to every outlet that had covered the story. A leaked Zoom clip of Duval laughing about flipping the ranch and removing the dogs was the knockout punch. Headlines screamed, "HOA president exposed in land theft plot." Duval resigned in disgrace at an emergency town hall, escorted out as neighbors shouted, "Shame." Karen vanished, her social media gone, her rental empty. The developer pulled out and the rezoning was canceled. Cheryl delivered the final blow at the town hall. Mr. Miller's team will proceed with a $2.5 million lawsuit for trespassing, property destruction, defamation, and emotional distress. Any community member who participated in the false accusations can sign a retraction or be included in the suit. The room was ice cold, the HOA's power shattered. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived from a camper mom. "Dear Mr. Miller, I didn't know we were trespassing. My kids still talk about your dogs, how gentle they were. I'm sorry. Thank you for standing your ground." It wasn't just about the land. It was about truth. Duke and I walked the fields the next morning, past the repaired fence, the sun rising over the grass where Karen's tents once stood. Peace, the kind I'd fought for, was mine again. The HOA learned the hard way. Mess with a man who trains protectors and you'll lose everything. Next time someone eyes my fence, they'll remember Karen's fall and they'll stay far away. This isn't just a story. It's a warning. Truth wins, but only if you fight for it. Hit like, share your thoughts, and subscribe for more battles against the Karens of the world. The ranch stands strong and so do we.